Hi, this is Coach Dan Williams with Character Advantage. Have you ever experienced a moment in your athletic career where you have been disqualified? Now, if you haven't already done so, I want you to make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't shared it with a friend of yours, I want you to share it with a friend. And I want you to like it, and I want you to add a comment below because I would love to hear from you. Now, as an athlete, I can look back at my athletic career and remember a couple of times where I was disqualified. Unfortunately for me, it would always happen at least one time a year. I would disqualify myself because of the actions that I would take on the field. Now, the sport that I played in college and semi-professionally was the sport of soccer. Inevitably, every year I would get at least a couple of yellow cards, and there would be that one game where I would get 2 yellow cards that would equal a red card, which was immediate dismissal from the game. And those were painful experiences. And the experience would go something like this. I played with a lot of passion, and I would be in the middle of the game, and I wouldn't be backing down. And, it would just build up, and I would have a hard time controlling my actions, and maybe I would say something disrespectfully to the official, and I would get the first yellow card. And then I would be playing hard, and it was just a hard tackle or a hard challenge, and I would pick up that second yellow card. And I would be really upset because I didn't feel like I really deserved the second yellow card. I would always walk off the field thinking, the error, the person that messed up wasn't me. The person that messed up was the official. And I would take out all my anger and all my frustration out on the official as I would be ruminating back in the locker room because you'd have to leave the field to play. And I would be on the bus going back, and I would just be thinking about how, that official just missed it and didn't understand. Now, after maybe a day or two, and the realization would set in that I'm not going to be able to play the next game, I would begin to realize that actually the fault was my own. One, I couldn't control my emotions in the moment, and two, I wasn't cognitive enough in the circumstance to realize that I needed to be careful playing on that one yellow card. And so I had no one really to blame but myself. It took 2 cards to get to that red. And so I could have managed my own play better in those situations. And so I began to understand something about how I was wired. As a human, I realized that, one, I was passionate, but sometimes my passion would get me in trouble, and I would have to sit out. And the pain for me in that moment would be that I only had so many games to play in my collegiate career. And so that was one less game that I had, and that the only person to blame was myself. And so the pressure of just the limited amount of time that I had and how I was really at fault in not taking full advantage of that limited amount of time that I had. And I would realize that I just struggled with really, control, and I struggled with people in authority, and I struggled to deal with those situations. Now, you can sit here and explain many different ways in which, and I've done this myself, many different ways that the official will mess up. They're human, just like us. They make mistakes. They see something that may not have actually been the way that it happened. But that's like all of us. We are all like that. And so it could be just as right that maybe I didn't see it the way that it actually did happen. And so it's not about right or wrong here. It's not about whether or not the official was right and I was right, or I was wrong or they were wrong. That's not really what I'm talking about here. The reality is that I couldn't control myself in that situation. And that's what I needed to begin to address as an athlete. Why? Why was that? And I began to look at the other ways that I acted. I mean, a lot of times I would act with, just disdain for an official or what they would say. My attitude reflected something about how I viewed the circumstance that I was in, or how I viewed other people, the leaders around me. And those are things that I realized didn't help me. Were actually attitudes that were putting me in situations that compromised my ability to be able to perform at a high level and play and maximize all the playing time that I could have as a player. And so I began to dive into, well, why is it that I just, there's something about people in authority that, cause me to get passionate and to lose control of my passions in those moments. And I began to realize that at my heart, was disobedient. I would always find a way to be disobedient in those moments. Now, you're thinking as an athlete, I'm talking about the relationship between you and your father or your mother, or you and the police officer that's pulled you over, or you and somebody else in authority, whether it be your teacher or somebody else. I'm not talking about position, and I'm not talking about roles. I'm talking about your heart. Like, what's going through your heart in those moments, that's what you need to really dive into. Because see, that's motivation. That's where your motivation comes from. So my motivation in that moment was to prove them wrong and myself right. And because that motivation was so powerful in that moment, it superseded my motivation to win the game. And it would disqualify myself. Or I would become disqualified because of my actions. And that's what I began to realize, okay, I need to really deal with that attitude. Because that motivation that's getting in the way of my success, that's getting in the way of my ability to succeed on the field, to maximize every playing opportunity that I have, is not something that I'm willing to put up with anymore. And I began to realize that I had a problem with authority. And I needed to deal with that. I needed to work through that. I needed to understand that I needed to change my attitude toward authority in a way that would allow me to achieve the success that I desired, to achieve the performance level that I knew I was capable of, that I wasn't living up to the full potential that I had, and I wasn't maximizing the time that I had because I was foolish in those moments. And that I needed to change my attitude so that I could be much more focused in those moments on the thing that I valued more than whatever I was allowing that passion to take me into. That, yes, maybe in that moment I valued more, but as I would reflect and look back at it, I would say, no, actually I don't value that. But because in that moment I allowed my passion to take over. And so I don't know if that's helpful for you as an athlete. It was something that I went through as an athlete. But I want to encourage you that as you think about your attitudes, those are so important. So that will help you because it'll help you set a course. And as you begin to identify the attitudes that you really want to demonstrate, because those are the attitudes you know are going to take you to the next level to help you achieve the goals and the dreams and the potential that you have as a player, that once you begin to identify those attitudes, then it will set down a course that you can begin to follow. And then when you're on that course, you'll begin to hopefully understand in those moments the attitudes that are most valuable to you and that you value more, and hopefully it will help you see in that moment truth rather than passion, so that you can see clearly what you need to override in that moment. Now, one of the ways that I help the players that I train as a personal trainer and the players that I train on the teams that I coach is I like to help give them tools, help give them new code to write in their software. Because I look at attitudes as kind of like the software that really runs. So it's really the code that's running the software of your life. And so I'm trying to plant and give them new code to rewrite maybe software that they need to rewrite. And so, I do that through narrative, I do that through storytelling, I do that through metaphors, I do that through pointing towards experiences that maybe we're sharing together and what we could draw out of that experience that can hopefully help them begin to identify what they want, what their desires are, and begin to rewrite their own software as they're going. Now, if you need help with that, if you're trying, but you're struggling with, trying to rewrite your own software, I'm here to help. Reach out to me. I'd love to get you on my email list where we can follow up and develop and give you tools and resources. And if you know someone else as an athlete who could benefit from this channel, share this channel with them so that we can begin to help each other grow in our understanding for how character can be your advantage.